All right, well, welcome everybody to our first DPP class. So just a little bit to get you started. Type 2 diabetes is something that's very common lately, and it's something that we want to try and prevent as much as we can. So the Prevent T2 program is a proven program that is to prevent or delay the onset of type 2 diabetes. It was developed by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And so let's go around the room and just kind of introduce ourselves. All right. Well, it's nice to meet everyone, and I'm super excited to get to work with you guys. My name is Chelsea Tabor, and I'll be working with you for a little while, and then I'll be going on maternity leave, but you will have Katie. She's going to be another one of your DPP coaches, and she's going to be awesome as well. Just a little brief background. I started with the DPP program in 2016, but this is my first time leading a class on my own, so you guys kind of get to be my guinea pigs. But I am also one of the registered dietitians at the health department. I do one-on-one counseling with MNT. We do diabetes self-management classes, diabetes basics classes, lots of different things pertaining to diabetes. But let's kind of go ahead and get started. So each one of you has a participant guide. Looks like this. And this is going to be very important for you guys to keep throughout the sessions, throughout this year-long program. It's going to have all of our information, our guides, our lessons, those types of things. So before we get started, we all have reasons for starting a program like this. Would any of you guys like to share why you decided to join this program? Yeah, family history is a really big risk factor for that. And that's great that you've decided to go ahead and get started with this now. Anybody else? Wanting to lose weight? Yeah, that's great. Anybody else have any reasons why they started? All right. Well, let's go ahead and we're going to flip in our books. We're going to go, so in your books, each tab is a different section, so there's 3 tabs. I'd like for you guys to go over and flip to the 3rd tab, and it's going to look like this. It's going to have our participant guide in it. And we're just going to kind of start with an overview of the program on page 3. So like we were saying earlier, Prevent T2 is to help prevent or delay the onset of type 2 diabetes. It is a year-long program. So for the first 16 weeks of the program, we are going to be meeting weekly. And then after that, we'll meet bi-monthly. And then for the last 6 months of the class, we'll meet monthly. We can consider that kind of our maintenance period. So that'll be our year-long program. So the goals for this program, by the end of the first 6 months, we want to try and lose at least 5 to 7% of our body weight and get at least 150 minutes of physical activity each week. By the end of the second 6 months, we want to make sure that we're keeping that weight off that we've lost. We also want to keep working towards that goal if we haven't reached our weight management goal yet. If you want to lose more weight, we want to work towards that. And then again, we want to make sure that we're continuing to get that 150 minutes of physical activity each week. Now, on pages 7 and 8, there's a chart to see what a 5 to 7% weight loss is going to look like for you. So if you guys want to go ahead and flip over to pages 7 and 8, what you'll do, you'll find your weight in the blue column. So your weight will be here in the blue column. And then it shows you what a 5%, a 6%, and a 7% weight loss looks like for you. So y'all take just a second and look at that. And keep that in mind because we're going to be putting that down on paper here in just a little bit. You know, for example, if you weighed 200 pounds and you lost 7%, that would be anywhere between around 14 pounds, or if you lost 5%, it would be around 10 pounds of your total weight. So just something to kind of keep in mind there. All right, so if everybody's taken a chance to look at that, as we discussed in the goals for the program, we do want to try and make sure that we are getting at least 150 minutes of physical activity each week. Now, when we're setting our physical activity goals, we want to make sure that we're choosing activities that are at least of moderate intensity. Does anybody know what that means? Right, so we want to make sure that we're getting our heart rate up, that we can still talk to somebody if we're exercising with somebody, but not necessarily be able to sing while we're exercising. So we want to be able to get our heart rate up just a little bit, and you can just test it out too. You check your pulse before you start your physical activity, and then check it after you've been doing physical activity for a little bit, just to kind of make sure that you are getting your heart rate up during your physical activity. So what are some activities that you do now that you would consider moderate intensity activity? All right, walking, that's a good one. Anybody else? Bike riding, so riding bikes up hills, yeah, that definitely gets your heart rate pumping. Anybody else? What about things like dancing or Zumba, doing different activities like that? Anybody? Yeah, you guys do that. Well, great. So these are just some different ideas that, what we would consider of a moderate intensity activity. So we do want to try and make sure that we're getting at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity each week. And that's going to be important throughout the course of this class. Okay. So now just to talk a little bit about the structure, like I said earlier, it is a 16-week program in the beginning, and then we're going to continue to do visits bi-monthly or monthly for the remainder of the year. Now, we are going to make this somewhat of a competition. So each week you are going to want to make sure that you're bringing your lifestyle guides. When you bring your lifestyle guide each week, you will get a point. So there's not quite enough of us to do teams, so we're going to be competing against each other individually. Some things that we might win by the end of this would be like a Fitbit, a Kindle, an Amazon gift card, and then we've got some other prizes that we're going to scatter throughout. So making sure that we do bring our activity or our lifestyle guides with us to class each week. Another thing that you can get points for is doing a midweek activity. So maybe you get together with some of the people here in the class and you guys go for a walk during the week, or you share a recipe. Since all of you guys, most of you work together, you can bring in a new recipe and say, hey, I made this healthy recipe. Let's try this for lunch today. Or after school, you get together and you walk. Maybe you invite some people that aren't teachers here at the school to come and join you after school to do a walk during the middle of the week. If you can't get together with group members, it's perfectly fine. Just make sure that you're doing some type of activity midweek, and then you'll also get a point for that. So midweek activities will also get us a point. We're also going to do some little competitive games and things like that. And so we'll get points while we're having class so that you guys can compete against each other. But for the most part, making sure that we are bringing our lifestyle guides and doing that midweek activity is going to be a source of consistent points throughout the program. In the front of your binders, we also have the program schedule. So kind of the tentative schedule of what's to expect for the next 16 weeks. And then after we end the 16 weeks, we'll print off another schedule for you guys to kind of show you what it's going to look like for the remainder of the class. I'll be sending out a link to this week's YouTube channel so that you can get this video online. Make sure that if there is a week that you can't come, maybe you have a teacher conference or a doctor's appointment or something like that, just be sure that you watch the video online. We can get self-reported weights that week instead of you weighing in class that week, but we will have to have a weight for that week. And after a little bit, we'll be checking your physical activity minutes, so you'll want to make sure and let us know how many actual minutes that you got in for the week as well, okay? All right, so at the start of each session, we will start with the weigh-ins like we did today. We'll weigh in first, and then in a couple of weeks, like I was saying, we're going to be getting your physical activity minutes. We're I'll show you the logs here in just a second where you'll keep all of that. But we will check that each week, and then we're also going to start checking food logs eventually as well. So make sure that you are keeping up with those each week. If you'll flip over to the second tab of your binder, there is a page protector in there. And it has your food and activity logs, okay? So in it, you can flip over to the first page. It has a place where you can write down all food, drinks, snacks, anything that you've had that day, what time you ate it, how much of that you ate. And then down, it has a place where you can put in your physical activity for that day. So it's got it broken down Monday through Sunday. You'll get a new one of these each week. You'll bring that in so we can check that out and make sure that you are doing what you're saying you're doing. Any questions about that? All right, good deal. So you guys are going to keep the record of your weight and your activity minutes and your food logs, but I'm also going to keep a record of your weight and your activity as well, because we want to make sure that we can track your progress well. So in group time, we'll talk about how to eat well, how to be more active, how to change our lifestyles. And it can be challenging to change our lifestyles when we're making, these small changes. But we'll also work through those challenges together, because a lot of you might be experiencing the same challenges. Maybe it's not having enough time to do things. Maybe it's that you get up, you come to work, you go home, you wash clothes, you do the dishes, you cook supper, then it's time for bed to get your kids ready, all that kind of stuff. So we realize that there are challenges to each of these things, but we'll work through those challenges together. And you'll also have a chance to share your thoughts and feelings about certain things that we've talked about, or, challenges that you have had that might help somebody else in the class. Only if you want to. You don't have to share each week. But it does help make it more interesting for the class. That way, we can share with each other what's going on, because it might be something that somebody else is struggling with as well. All right, so let's flip back over to tab 3, and we're going to be on page 4. And we're just going to kind of go over a basics of diabetes. Now, are any of you all familiar with diabetes? I know some of you said you had a family history, right? Do you guys know any specifics about diabetes? Well, that's okay. So, just kind of in general, breaking it down just a little bit. When we eat food, we break it down in our stomach, in our intestines. After it's broken down, it's turned into sugar. That sugar then goes into our bloodstreams, which then has to meet up with the hormone called insulin, which lets it into our cells to provide us with energy. And that's what gives us the energy to get up and walk and move and talk and do the daily things that we do each day. So in people with type 2 diabetes, that hormone insulin is not necessarily working the way that it's supposed to. Either it's not working right, or we're not making quite enough of it. So we want to make sure that we are preventing this, because we want to stay as well as possible. In type 2 diabetes, it can harm, I like to say, everything that blood goes to, it can harm that area. So it can harm our heart and our blood vessels, which can lead to heart attacks and strokes. It can damage our nerves, where we might lose feeling in our fingers and our toes. But we also might start sweating excessively because our body doesn't know how to regulate the temperature anymore because of the nerve damage. It can affect our kidneys, which can eventually lead to kidney failure. It can cause blindness, and it can also cause other problems with our eyes. It can cause damage to our feet, which can ultimately lead to an amputation, and none of us want to have that. It can cause problems with our gums, so we might lose our teeth, we might have a lot of dental cavities, so it can definitely cause problems with our gums. And then it can also cause problems with our skin. So, a lot of times we hear diabetics talking about that they have that dry, itchy skin, or they might have a wound that's not healing well. So it can definitely harm pretty much every area of our body. So, who is more likely to have type 2 diabetes? There are certain risk factors that put us at higher risk for developing type 2 diabetes, which all of us in this room must have had some of those risk factors to participate in the class. So, being overweight or obese is one of the biggest risk factors for type 2 diabetes. Spending a lot of time sitting down or lying down, that can be a big risk factor. So we want to be up and moving and active. We might have a parent or sibling that has type 2 diabetes. That increases our risk. Certain ethnicities, so African Americans, Hispanics, Native Americans, or Asian Americans, that can cause you to have a higher risk for type 2 diabetes. If we're over the age of 45, this may be because people tend to be less active and gain weight at that age, but type 2 diabetes is also on the rise among young people. So sometimes we'll see it in younger people, even if they aren't over the age of 45. And then it puts us at higher risk if we've had diabetes while we were pregnant. So if you had, like you said, having that gestational diabetes. All right. So while a lot of these things are things that we can't necessarily control, like the family history, those types of things, there are a couple of factors that we can control. And that is our weight and our physical activity. So we want to make sure that we're doing the best that we can to control our weight and to make sure that we are getting that physical activity in. All right, so if you'll flip on over to page 5, this is going to be our goal sheet. So this is going to be our goals for the next 6 months. So for our activity goal, in the next 6 months, it's going to be the same for everyone. We want to make sure that we're getting at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity. Why is that important? Because it gets us up, it gets us moving. It helps us to lose weight. It helps us to burn those extra calories that we eat throughout the day. So we do want to make sure that we're getting at least 150 minutes of physical activity. Now, before you can set your weight goals, we looked at that chart earlier. I want you guys to write down in the light blue column, what you weigh today. So you're going to put your starting weight down. And then go ahead and flip over to that weight loss by the numbers, that chart that we looked at earlier. And you're going to choose whether or not you want to aim for 5% weight loss, 6% weight loss, or 7% weight loss. So once you choose that, you'll put that in on that first white line, and then on the second one, you'll put what that looks like. So is it 8 pounds, 10 pounds, 15 pounds? And then you're going to subtract that from your weight today, and you're going to put what your goal weight is going to be. So I'll give you guys just a couple minutes to do that. All right, has everybody been able to get that down? Good deal. Okay, so now we're going to flip over to tab 2 in your lifestyle guides. And it's going to have what we call our My Action Plan Journal. All right, so let's go ahead and flip on over to page 2. So to help you all succeed in this program, we want to make sure that you have a new action plan at each session, okay? So each week we're going to bring in new papers for you guys to fill out, and that'll be what your goal is for the week. So we're going to be setting these small goals to ultimately reach our big goal, okay? So before we get started on that, let's look on page 2 at some different tips for making your action plan. All right. So when we're making an action plan, we definitely want it to be realistic, okay? Make plans that are going to be realistic for you. So we don't want to say, I'm going to lose all 15 pounds by next week, right? That's not very realistic. We want to set goals that is something that we definitely feel like we can achieve during the week. You want to make it doable, you know, so maybe your goal is to walk outside. But if you know the weather's going to be rainy all next week, is that necessarily a doable goal? Right, so we want to make sure that we are choosing those goals that are doable. You want to make small changes, and then over the time, those changes will add up. And so you'll want to make sure that you're doing things that are fun for you, things that you enjoy, but also making sure that it's something that you can do each week. You know, if you know that you're going to have a lot of, meetings and parent-teacher conferences and things like that after school, you don't want to necessarily put down that you're going to start walking after school if you know you have all these meetings. So definitely try and make it doable. We also want it to be specific. Okay, so in your actions, you want to include as many details as you possibly can. So what you're going to do, where you're going to do it, when you're going to do it, and how long you're going to do it. You know, so it gives you a better idea of how to troubleshoot for days that maybe it is going to rain. You'll know exactly what to put on there. You want to be flexible. So like I said, it might be that it's going to rain. Your plan is to walk outside. So we want to make sure that we're flexible with our schedule and find something else that we can do. So maybe it's that we'll do a workout video inside. So look for ways to cope with those challenges that we might face during the week that would cause us to not be able to meet our goals. We definitely want to try and make sure that we're only focusing on those behavior changes. So for instance, you can control how many pounds you lose by focusing on your actions, such as like what you're eating or how active you're going to be. So those are what we consider behaviors. So maybe your goal is to start buying healthier snacks at work. You know, instead of buying that Little Debbie snack cake every day, maybe you buy some different snacks at the grocery store that are going to be a healthier option for you. And then make it enjoyable. Make it something that you enjoy doing. So you don't want to change, you know, if you don't like eating yogurt to begin with, don't make that your goal. You know, don't say I'm going to replace all of my sour cream and all of this stuff with yogurt if yogurt's something that you don't like. Or don't say that you're going to replace your sodas if, you know, you can't, if you're not going to be willing to give that up. So make sure that you are making an action plan for that. So go ahead and flip on over to the third page. And I'll have you guys go ahead and write down, look at this. This is going to be your goal from today to work on for next week, okay? All right. Now for the last thing today, we're going to get up and do a little activity. It's called the Lazy Monster. And so we're going to go ahead and do that activity.